One of the most powerful ways that God intervenes when a narcissist manipulates and harms you is by revealing the truth. At first, it may not feel like divine intervention. It may seem more like confusion, sadness, or even betrayal, but in reality, it is a blessing. God is removing the blindness that once kept you in the dark. You see, deception is the narcissist's strongest weapon. They twist reality, manipulate your emotions, and distort the truth to maintain control over you, and for a time it works. You believe their lies, make excuses for their behavior, and try to justify the manipulation, but then something changes. God steps in. At first it may be a subtle whisper, a nagging feeling in your gut, a sense of discomfort you can't fully explain. You start to notice inconsistencies, contradictions between what they say and what they do. Slowly you begin to see flashes of their true character, and the illusion begins to crumble. This is God's way of revealing to you what has always been there, right in front of you. And understand this. This moment of realization does not happen by chance. It is a deliberate act of divine intervention. Think about how often Scripture shows God exposing deceit, from the serpent in the garden to the Pharisees who pretended to be righteous. The Bible is full of instances where the truth eventually comes to light. In John 8:32, Jesus says, "Then you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." This isn't just a comforting message, it's a warning. Truth and freedom are connected, but before you can experience freedom, you must be willing to face the truth, even when it's painful, and it is painful. When you finally see the narcissist for who they truly are, it brings a profound sense of loss. You grieve not only the relationship but also the illusion that has been shattered. The person you thought you knew never really existed. The love you thought was real was actually conditional and superficial. The support they pretended to offer came with strings attached. But don't let that grief make you retreat. Don't allow it to push you into denial. God reveals the truth because He loves you too much to leave you in deception. But here's where it gets difficult. When God opens your eyes, you have to make a choice. You can either accept the truth or you can reject it. This is where many people struggle. The truth is often uncomfortable. It disrupts our peace, our plans, and our desires. It forces us to face things we'd rather ignore. The narcissist depends on this hesitation. They rely on your inability to see the truth because once you do, their control is gone. This is why so many people remain trapped in toxic cycles, even when they know better. Understanding the truth and acting on it are two different things. And this is where faith comes in. Faith isn't just about believing in God, it's about trusting Him enough to walk away from anything that contradicts His truth. If God is showing you something, if He's revealing that this person isn't who they seem to be, you have a responsibility to listen. Now some might say, "But I can change them." No, you can't. Only God can change someone's heart, and even then that person must be willing. A narcissist thrives on control, and real change requires. That's not a transformation most of them are willing to make. So your focus shouldn't be on fixing them, it should be on following the truth God has shown you. Think about it. Why would God reveal the truth to you if He wanted you to remain in deception? Why would He give you clarity if He wanted you to stay confused? He wouldn't. God reveals the truth because He's calling you to something better. He's calling you to freedom, to healing, to purpose. But freedom comes with a price, and that price is often discomfort. It's the pain of breaking free, the fear of the unknown, and the challenge of rebuilding your identity outside their influence. But temporary discomfort is a small price to pay for lasting peace. So if God is opening your eyes, don't look away. If He's showing you the truth, don't resist it, because the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a comforting lie. And when you finally accept it, when you step into that clarity, you'll realize something powerful. This wasn't just about the narcissist. This was about you, about your strength, your worth, and your ability to stand in the truth, even when it cost you everything. When you go through the storm of being used and hurt by a narcissist, it doesn't just leave scars, it leaves you questioning everything. You wonder if you're strong enough to move on, if you'll ever heal, if you'll ever trust again. And in those moments when you feel weak, when you feel lost, that's when God does His greatest work. Because while the narcissist tried to break you, God is using this experience to build you up. It doesn't happen overnight. It unfolds in stages, through moments of quiet realization and through battles fought alone. At first, all you feel is the weight of it, the betrayal, the exhaustion, the emotional drain. Narcissists have a way of making you doubt your own reality, your own instincts. They slowly erode your confidence until you no longer recognize who you've become. But here's the thing about God. He doesn't just restore what's been taken. He rebuilds you into something stronger than before. Think about how adversity works in nature. A tree that faces strong winds grows deeper roots. A muscle that's torn during exercise grows back stronger. Strength is not something given, it's something earned. The same is true for your spirit. Every insult, every manipulation, every time you were made to feel small, God saw it. And He didn't just watch. He allowed it to shape you, to strengthen your resolve, to move you toward the person who will never again be deceived, controlled, or broken. Some may ask, why would God allow me to go through this in the first place? Why didn't He stop it? That's a valid question. But think about it. Some of the strongest people you know, the wisest, the most unshakable, how did they become that way? Through suffering, through trials, through experiences that could have broken them, but instead refined them. God isn't in the business of keeping you comfortable. He's in the business of making you strong. And He does that through fire, not to destroy you, but to purify you, to burn away false beliefs, to remove dependencies on the wrong people, and to shape you into something better than you were before. That pain you feel, that's the old version of you being shed. The version that tolerated disrespect. The version that made excuses for mistreatment. The version that thought love meant enduring suffering instead of recognizing your worth. That version had to go. God is not just saving you from the narcissist. He's preparing you for what's ahead. Because the truth is, you were never meant to live in bondage, not to a person, not to fear, not to self-doubt. And sometimes it takes the hardest trials to awaken you to that truth. If you had never experienced manipulation, you might not have learned to recognize the truth. If you had never been betrayed, you might not have learned how to protect your heart. If you had never been broken, you might not have discovered your own strength. This is why Scripture often reminds us that trials are not just hardships, they are opportunities. James 1:2-4 says, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Did you catch that? Not lacking anything. That means every struggle, every hardship, every tear shed for someone who never truly valued you is part of the process, a process designed to make you whole, to make you complete, and to ensure that nothing and no one can shake you again. But here's where the real challenge lies. Strength is not just about surviving, it's about transforming. It's about taking what was meant to harm you and using it as fuel to become unstoppable. And that requires a choice. You can let this experience make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. You can see yourself as a victim, or you can see yourself as someone who overcame. The choice is yours. And let me tell you something, when you choose strength, when you choose growth, when you choose to stand tall despite everything that tried to break you, you become someone the narcissist can no longer control. You become someone who cannot be manipulated, who cannot be deceived, who cannot be toyed with. Because the truth is, once you know your worth, once you see who you were meant to be, you will never let anyone mistreat you again. So don't despise this process. Don't resent the struggle. God is using it to create something in you that no one can take away. And when it's all over, when you look back, you'll realize something profound. The narcissist thought they were destroying you, but all they did was make you unbreakable. There comes a point in every toxic relationship when everything starts to unravel. The tension builds, the manipulation stops working as it used to, and cracks begin to show. At first, it may feel like a personal failure, like something you should have been able to prevent. You wonder if you could have done something different, said something better, or been more patient. But in reality, what's happening isn't a breakdown, it's a breakthrough. Because when God removes a narcissist from your life, it's not punishment, it's deliverance. Separation is one of the hardest things the human heart must go through. We are naturally designed for connection, for relationships, for love. So when a relationship ends, even one built on deceit and control, it leaves a huge void. The absence of someone who once occupied so much of your time and energy feels unnatural. And the narcissist, they are fully aware of this. They rely on it. They manipulate your emotions, keeping you attached just enough so you hesitate to move on. They make you believe that leaving means you failed, that walking away means giving up on something worth keeping. What if leaving isn't about surrendering? What if it's actually God's way of pulling you away from something that was never meant for you in the first place? There's a story in the Bible that often gets overlooked in discussions like this, the story of Lot and his wife. When God told Lot to leave Sodom, he wasn't merely guiding him away, he was saving him from certain destruction. The city was beyond redemption, completely corrupt, and Lot was given a chance to escape. However, his wife couldn't fully let go. She looked back, and because of that, she didn't make it to freedom. This is exactly what happens when we refuse to walk away from relationships that hurt us. God may open the door, but He won't force you through it. He can remove people from your life, but if you chase after them, if you hold on to what He's trying to free you from, you are choosing to remain in bondage rather than moving toward freedom. Sometimes the narcissist leaves first. They discard you when they sense you're no longer useful to them. When that happens, it might feel like rejection, but I want you to shift your perspective. What if their departure wasn't rejection at all? What if it was God removing them for you, knowing you wouldn't do it yourself? Sometimes divine intervention looks like closed doors. Sometimes God doesn't just ask you to walk away, He makes it impossible for you to stay. And yes, it's painful, but here's the truth. The pain of separation is temporary. The pain of remaining in a toxic situation is enduring. God doesn't remove people from your life for no reason. He does it to protect you, to realign you, and to prepare you for something greater. Yet so many of us fight to hold on to what is harming us. We pray for God to bless us, but we cling to relationships that leave us in pieces. We ask Him for peace, but we stay in chaos. We plead for strength, but we return to what weakens us. At some point you have to realize that if God is removing someone from your life, it's for a reason. No amount of pleading, no amount of longing, no amount of what-ifs will turn them into someone they were never meant to be. And this is where faith comes in. Faith is trusting that even when you don't understand why something is happening, God sees the bigger picture. Faith is stepping away even when you're unsure of what's next. Faith is believing that a closed door isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of something better. And that's exactly what happens when you let go. The truth is, you cannot receive what God has planned for you while your hands are still holding on to what He asked you to release. There's no space for healing when you're still gripping what broke you. There's no space for growth when you're standing in the same toxic situation. You might not see it now, but one day you'll look back and realize that losing them wasn't a loss at all. It was a gain of clarity, strength, freedom, and most importantly, the life you were meant to live. You'll be free from the burden of someone who was never meant to go with you into your future. So don't resist what God is trying to free you from. Don't fight the separation that's leading you to restoration, because when God removes a narcissist from your life, He's not just taking something away, He's making space for something much better. What's missing isn't really a part of you. It's the part of them that used to occupy your mind, the part of you conditioned to seek their approval, to tiptoe around them, to define yourself by their opinion. And once they're gone, that empty space won't remain empty for long. God will begin to fill it with something much greater, the truth about who you are and what you truly deserve. But here's where the real journey begins, because knowing your worth isn't just about feeling good about yourself. It's about what you tolerate, what you accept. One of the hardest, yet most freeing lessons you'll ever learn is that love should never demand you to abandon who you are. That's not love, it's control. And God will make sure you understand this, even if it means you have to walk through fire. Because sometimes the only way to truly understand your worth is to find yourself in a situation where you have no choice but to reclaim it. Think about it. How many times did you let yourself be mistreated? How many times did you justify the narcissist's actions, telling yourself they didn't mean it, that they would change, that if you loved them enough they would finally see your worth, but they never did? Not because you weren't valuable, but because they couldn't see it. That's the essential truth God needs you to recognize. Your worth doesn't decrease just because someone else refuses to acknowledge it. When God teaches you your worth, He does it through a process of rebuilding. At first it feels uncomfortable, setting boundaries, saying no, standing firm in your beliefs. These are all things the narcissist trained you to avoid, because the more you compromised yourself, the more control they had. But now God is showing you that boundaries are not walls blocking love, they are gates that protect it. Boundaries are the difference between living a peaceful life and one filled with chaos. And many people struggle with this because when you start setting boundaries, it feels unnatural. You've been taught to believe that self-sacrifice is virtuous, that making others happy is your duty, and that putting yourself first is selfish. But I want you to understand something. There's nothing selfish about refusing to be mistreated. There's nothing unkind about expecting respect. There's nothing unloving about walking away from someone who refuses to value you. In fact, the greatest act of love you can show to yourself and others is to demonstrate what real love looks like. And real love doesn't demand you destroy yourself to make someone else comfortable. Look at how Jesus carried himself. He was compassionate, forgiving, and patient, but he wasn't a doormat. He set boundaries. He walked away from those who wouldn't listen to the truth. He didn't beg for acceptance, nor did he tolerate manipulation. And yet he was the very embodiment of love. If Christ in all his perfection understood the importance of self-worth and boundaries, why do we struggle to do the same? Because fear stands in the way. Fear of rejection, fear of loneliness, fear that if we stand up for ourselves we'll lose the people we love. But let me tell you something. The people who truly love you will never ask you to betray yourself to keep them in your life. And the ones who do, they were never meant to stay. So when God teaches you your worth, He's not just sending a feel-good message. He's preparing you for the future. Once you understand your worth, you won't allow yourself to be around those who try to diminish it. Once you learn to set boundaries, you won't find yourself stuck in a cycle of abuse and manipulation. And that's the real victory. Not just surviving what the narcissist put you through, but becoming someone who will never experience it again. Because when you finally understand your worth, when you embrace the strength God has built in you, you will walk differently, speak differently, choose differently. The people who once had power over you, they will have none anymore. So don't resist the lesson. Don't fight the discomfort of growth, because God isn't just trying to heal you. He's trying to transform you. And once you see yourself the way He sees you, once you realize that you were never meant to be used, abused, or diminished, you'll realize something powerful. The moment you stop accepting less is the moment you step into the life God always intended for you. One of the hardest things to accept after enduring the abuse of a narcissist is the thought that something good could come from it. At first, all you see is the wreckage, the broken trust, the emotional exhaustion, the deep wounds that seem impossible to heal. You wonder why it happened, why you had to endure so much pain, why God allowed it in the first place. But what if I told you that God doesn't just restore what was lost? He uses it to create something even greater. That's how He works. He doesn't just bring you back to where you were before the storm. He takes you beyond it. You see, God never wastes pain. Not a single tear. No single moment of suffering, not a single dark night of the soul is without purpose. What the enemy meant for evil, God uses for good. And this is where everything starts to change. Because when you realize your pain has purpose, you stop seeing yourself as a victim. You stop defining yourself by what was done to you. You stop living in the past, replaying the betrayal, carrying the weight of resentment. Instead, you begin to see your pain in a new way, not as something that broke you, but as something that prepared you. And that's where transformation begins. Because once you stop seeing yourself as the person who was hurt and start seeing yourself as the person who overcame, everything changes. You no longer walk with insecurity. You no longer tolerate the same treatment. You no longer attract the same toxic cycles. Why? Because you've been refined. And refinement isn't easy. It requires fire. It requires pressure.